Hi, my name is John Culver. I'm going to be talking about climate change today with a focus on regenerative agriculture. Generally, most people are familiar with climate change and its effects, but to give you an overview, we have greenhouse gas emissions, which is caused by burning fossil fuels, industrial manufacturing, and agriculture and other means, which creates a blanket of molecules in the atmosphere which trap heat on our planet. This leads to temperature rises, which causes a domino effect of natural disasters such as ice caps melting, floods, starvation, hurricanes, sea level risings, and many more. We've seen since 1750, when the Industrial Revolution began, we pumped about 1,000 billion tons, known as a gigaton, of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. This is called our legacy load. So a lot of talk behind climate change is reducing emissions, which is very, very important. We do need to curb that and get that lowered. We also need to reduce the buildup that's currently there. And this can be done through regenerative agriculture. So while agriculture is only 10% of the emissions section, it can be a huge factor to scrubbing the atmosphere of the carbon that exists. Regenerative agriculture consists of 5 main pillars: minimizing soil disruption, cover crops, diversification, ensuring root structure, and integrating livestock. So with minimizing soil disruption, this is known as a practice for tilling the soil. It's very common in industrial agriculture. It leads to destruction of soil, emissions, and just weaker soil in general, which produces worse crops, and it requires more chemicals, etc. The cover crops and crop diversification, you want to plant different harvest crops in different areas, and while you're not harvesting, you want to plant other plants there with diversification as well, to ensure a diverse and complex root structure and soil microbe habitat. You also want to integrate livestock to graze the cover crop, or the cover crop. This will sequester the carbon from the air. Basically, the plant pulls the carbon out of the air. It sends about 40% down to the roots, and then the cows come along and they eat the grass or whatever the cover crop is, and their hosts push it down in there, and they pack it down so the carbon gets trapped in the earth. They also, like when they poop, they enrich the soil with microbes and nutrients. Next, we'll talk about what industrial agriculture is and what it uses. It's basically what's using 95% of current farmland, and it uses pesticides, just chemical sprays all over the crops. Feedlots, most of the crops in the States, about 70% are like grain and corn, which get sent to feedlots for animals just to get slaughtered there. They also use tillage, which, as I've talked about, it destroys the soil and basically turns it to dust and destroys the habitat which we need to grow crops. Also, the farmers have a reliance on subsidies from the government. They basically get a paycheck before they even step on their land, because it's a guaranteed price per bushel or whatever it is. For pesticides, the history, we have this German scientist. His name is Fritz Haber. He developed the first cases of chemical weapons in World War II, which later became our pesticides as we know them today. He also developed chemicals used in gas chambers during the Holocaust, so not a really good dude. After the war was over, the West took a lot of these pesticides back to the States, gave them to farmers to commit a war on like insects that were destroying the crops. And basically, once you start using pesticides, the soil degrades, and you have to keep using more and more. It's a ruthless cycle. The pesticides, as you can see from here, you get 3 pounds of chemicals sprayed for every American on industrial farms. This just leaks into the sand, the land, the water, our bodies. So like prenatal women who are breastfeeding and they're exposed to this stuff. There's over 200 peer-reviewed studies of ADHD in children that is caused from or correlated to these sort of pesticides. For feedlots, they're just straight up inhumane. They're packing cows just tight together and other livestock, and then they're just feeding them corn grains, so it's not very nutritious. And then they're just getting butchered. So I made my little comic here. We have industrial agriculture over here, where you got the tilling, releasing CO2. You got the cows packed here with the grain and the water, and they're just emitting. They're just emission machines. However, with regenerative agriculture, you have plants year round growing, so you're always sucking CO2 in. It's a no-till system. They actually have modifications to tractors where it doesn't till the land, so it doesn't reduce the CO2. It leaves the cover soil, the topsoil, on there, whereas tilling it basically turns it to dust, and it erodes much faster. So any water, there's a lot more water runoff. It's not absorbed as well. When you get topsoil from regenerative farming or agriculture, it absorbs the water better. It creates a better microbe environment for the soil and the crops. The animals while you have less crop yield, it's more profitable because it's more nutritious. You have crops year round. I'll get into that later. As you can see from tillage here, soil is the best source of carbon we have, storage of carbon that we have. It can hold double what is held by plants and the atmosphere combined. It releases CO2 emissions, as we talked about. Soil health is reduced. The microbes in there and the organisms, the worms, all the life is just taken out, and it's turned into dust. We see this even now in the States. A lot of farmland is just turning into like brown dirt, and in order to get anything grow, you have to pump a bunch of more chemicals into it. So I got a little clip here that I'm going to show. It's on NASA's satellites that shows CO2 emissions during tilling and harvesting. So I'll let him take it away.
This is a supercomputer model by NASA. We're concerned of the red and purples being CO2. I want you to notice the dates. That is February, March. Now, what are we doing March, April? What do we do in modern agriculture in April? We are tilling. We're tilling the land. And look at the huge plumes of CO2. Look at the dates. May. Now, let's see what happens around June. Look at the colors change. Ladies and gentlemen, what is happening in June?
So if you have the cover crop all year round,
you see how powerful the living plants are? Can you imagine if we had all our rangeland and all our cropland covered? A covered planet is a healthy planet.
You can replicate this.
We can fix
Africa,
a lot of our
Texas.
climate issues
You
to
can replicate
bring the
this all
CO2
across the
down
world.
into a living plant and put it back into the soil where it belongs.
Okay. So we'll go back here. So the main problems or hindrance to regenerative agriculture, people argue, well, you got subsidies, I'm already getting paid. So there's economic benefits to regenerative agriculture, and I'll get into that in the next slide. They say smaller crop yields, and while that is true, you have more profitable crops, and your livestock's more profitable. You also have year-round income. Overgrazing, this can be easily by just planning when you're going to have your livestock graze certain areas. Education, a lot of people don't know the soil health, and a lot of farmers don't realize what they're doing when they're tilling and spraying all these chemicals. The last one, the biggest, is politics. You got to get politicians to get on board with this. The economic benefit of this, currently the average profit per acre is, as you see, 10 cents to 3 pounds, depending on the subsidies and what it is. With regenerative agriculture, there's a case and farms that can produce over $100 per acre because they have more diverse crops that they can sell year round, so they get more harvest in 1 year. They also have livestock, which they can sell and produce. You get diversification of all these things. A 2020 study showed it was 20% less yield for crops, but it's 78% more profitable. So huge difference in the amount of money you can get. This will eliminate the subsidies aspect of it. You get healthier soil, more livestock. It eliminates inputs. Inputs are like pesticides and chemically engineered seeds that farmers currently have to buy from certain companies, and you get year-round income. So to conclude, what you can do and what we should do is you can do compost. If you can check your local waste management and see if they usually have a green bin, so you throw like backyard waste in there, like plant material. But like San Francisco, they have compost where you throw food scraps in the green bin too, and they collect it from restaurants and residential, and then create compost and send it to local farmers. You can check your local areas to see if you can put food waste in your green bin. Don't just throw it in there. Make sure you verify, because some don't allow it. Like mine here in San Diego, I called them and they don't. They're working on a plan for it. And the last one is to pressure your politicians. It goes under the radar because it's like a Midwest thing and rural, and it's not too focused on where the climate change ideas are happening, but it is really important. So thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, throw them in the discussion. Thank you.